obviously you've got a really nice detailed overview from the team at Aberdeen City Shire and on behalf of Highlands as to what's expected. So what we're going to do in this session is just to make sure that the systems don't prevent you in any way in terms of bidding for this. I'm obviously very aware that I think in the audience we're going to have some people who are quite experienced. So you might be looking at PCS, PCST, totally familiar. But others, particularly, I think there was something, Laurie, that you mentioned, some of the smaller organisations that maybe don't realise that you have a contribution to this employability DPS. So I'm going to cover quickly across the whole landscape. We're going to look at Public Contract Scotland and how to register if you haven't done already, how to find the notice. We'll come back towards the end of the presentation about the quick quotes and stage 2, if you like. And then we'll have a look at PCS tender, which is where this is where you actually have to put in your application. There's various elements here about downloading documents, filling in your response, sending questions to the buyer, and so on. So for anyone that's brand new, please don't be alarmed. These slides are really designed to take you through a step-by-step. So when you finish the webinar today, you'll be able to get the slides and work your way through stage by stage to make sure that you're getting the right application. The good news is there are no deadlines now for this DPS. So this is something that's completely open continuously now till 2027, I believe. So that takes the pressure off, but obviously the sooner that you submit, the sooner, obviously I think Keely said, the sooner you come in on board, the sooner you're going to get some work from this as well. So I've got to start with Public Contract Scotland, and this is where every opportunity in Scotland is advertised in a single site. I suspect quite a number of people listening in today will be registered with this, but if you aren't, there's the link. And it is, regardless even of the Aberdeenshire City Highland opportunity, it might be that you're interested in other regions. So this is really where you need to be engaged in to get the contract notices coming through. It's free of charge to register. The registration process is very simple. I've just shown the screen here. So on the right hand side, there's a registration button. And once you get beyond that, you've asked really for a number of really absolutely basic things. I think the only one that people ask about is this strange NUTS code. And that's where you have to choose the region where you're actually based. And occasionally this one here, which I think is going to be quite relevant for this tender. So are you third sector? So that means that you're not a limited company by shares, so to speak, but you're a social enterprise, a CIC, a charity, whatever. So you would click that. It doesn't make you any less likely or unlikely to bid, but it's just for information at this stage. So a few forms to register. And once you've registered, you'll get obviously the feedback in terms of, I think you can choose your own password and so on, but you'll get into PCS. You'll probably be asked at the registration process, and this is not shown in the slides here, but it's quite important. You have to choose your categories that you think you want to receive alerts in. So aside from this particular opportunity, there are areas, and that's, I think probably for this, if you're a novice, I would recommend that you go to the Supplier Development Programme courses and get some training, if you like, some basic training on how to do that process. Otherwise, once you've registered, the simplest way to get engaged with this particular procurement and the DPS is to use this search the buyer button. So you're on PCS, this is going to be at the top of your screen, whatever screen you're in. If you type in Aberdeen, it's probably enough, and Aberdeen City Council comes up, because Aberdeen City Council is the lead in this procurement. So it's not that it's just for them, as you know, it's for Aberdeenshire and also Highland Council. But to find the tender documents, you need to click on the Aberdeen City Council link here. When you do that, you're going to get into this View Buyer Details screen. So this is the same for every single public authority, by the way, if you're interested to do a search the buyer for other people. And what you're looking for is the current contract notices. And you'll see at the top here the dynamic purchasing system for employability services. The deadline looks rather strange. Obviously, it's 2027, but that just reflects the fact that this is a 5-year open-ended contract for you to apply for, and it's published obviously just on Monday this week. Some of you might be aware that there was a previous first phase publication, so that's gone. People have been awarded onto that, and Keely and the others might just say a wee bit in the Q&A about how that process worked. But this is open actually continuously now, so you won't expect to get any other deadlines apart from this. So when you click on that line for the DPS, it will bring up what they call the View the Notice. And this is in your, obviously, suppliers area as well. And you get this indication now to divert to PCS tender. So at the moment, we've found the notice. It's in Public Contract Scotland, just where you get all the adverts. But in this case, in order to complete your DPS application, you need to move to another system. It's a bit confusing, I would say, for buyers and suppliers alike. But at this point, when you see this blue box, you know that you need to make a note of the fact you've got to move to PCS tender. And we'll talk about that shortly. But this is the important bit. So you need to make a note of the code 23027. And that's what's going to take you into the actual application documents when you move to PCST. We'll just make a slight comment here. For some reason, the notice as it stands at the moment diverts you to the go to ITTs open to all suppliers. But in fact, what you need to be looking for is the PQQs, this bit here, open to all suppliers. So if you go to ITTs, put in this code, you're not going to find anything. If you go to PQQs, and I'll show you that shortly, you will pick it up very easily. So it's, I think, something to do with the portal rather than the way that Aberdeen City have registered this. So PCS tender, has generally been used to manage kind of higher thresholds of larger contracts, but increasingly, because it provides quite a lot of data back to the public sector, a lot of local authorities and other public buyers are actually using it for certain types of procurement. It's free of charge, so in the same way that you register for PCS, you can go into PCS tender, and I'll show you that in the live demo. And the slides, very easy to get yourself set up, and it's obviously used across the whole of the public sector. The PCS tender, and this is, a lot of people say, oh, I don't like PCS tender, it's really tricky and da-da-da, but in some ways it's kind of quite straightforward in that it's a form that you fill in online. You can do it, come in and out of the form and fill it in. And it also means that once you've filled it in, the next time you bid, all your data kind of pre-fills all the boxes, so that it reduces the need to fill in a Word form all the time. This is what the home page looks like, and this is where you get the register as supplier on PCS tender. So this is where you'll need to go to find the DPS documents. The registration, unfortunately, you're going to have to repeat a little bit what you've done to register for Public Contract Scotland, but it's pretty lightweight, I would say. And they ask for things like number of employees, but it's a range. Organisation turnover, again, it's a range. You get to choose your username. They will send you a temporary password, but then you can choose your own password and confirm. So it's a little bit different to registration for PCS. So once you're registered, you're ready to try and find the DPS documents to start completing them. And if you ignore what's in the contract notice at the moment, go to ITTs. If you ignore that, if you could please just go to this PQQs section here. When you do that, that's going to bring you into an area here called PQQs, Open to All Suppliers. PQQs is a very old acronym, I would say. It stands for Pre-Qualification Questionnaire, but it's widely used for a process where you submit all your company details. It's a little bit maybe not quite backward looking, but saying, well, here's our experience to date, here's our accounts, here's our insurance. So it's not anything about how we will deliver a specific contract. So the PQQ area is used by lots of buying authorities now for DPS type arrangements. So that's maybe quite an interesting area, to be honest, for you to look at anyway, just to see which ones are coming up. So there's a bit of a procedure here, really, just to move from the ones that are open from to all suppliers, and to make sure that you get it into this My PQQs area, because potentially you're going to have 2 to 3 to 4 pages worth of open opportunities. So when we looked at PCS, in that blue box, there was this code. So you need to enter the filter. There's a little drop-down box. You choose project code. You choose in a drop-down box contains, and then you put in, sorry, this is the previous one that we used last time, but this is the current one, 23027. Click on search, and that will bring up a link that's going to look like this, and I'll show you that in the online demo. So once you've clicked on the link, it's a bit clunky. You need to click on express an interest. To be honest, at this stage, I would already look at this printable view, because this gives you the whole questionnaire and all the attachments, everything that's kind of on the online screen. Otherwise, once you're in the online screen, it's quite difficult to print anything off. So to be honest, before I express an interest, I quite often click on that printable view and then express an interest. And then when you get to the next stage, there's an instruction where you have to intend to respond, and that will open up all the questionnaires. So it's a little bit, I suppose, what Keely was saying for suppliers and buyers. It's, to be honest, it's quite similar to how lots of systems work, but it seems to me you go through lots of different stages. And if you're new to this, you might find that this is a wee bit tricky, so you might want to come back to the slides and just work your way through how this is set up. So we're here now at the DPS for Employability Services, and under PQQ details, we've got settings. So that will tell you when the deadline is for any submissions, which I think is 2027. It will give you a contact detail, but most of that you have to do through the messages. Most important is this area here for buyer attachments. Sorry, I'm just going to take a glass of water. And for this particular exercise, rather than going to what you would normally see in this qualification response, is a big long form with lots of questions. For this particular exercise, you don't need to do that. Everything's just been left blank. All you need to do is upload certain attachments and submit them to the buyer. So this buyer attachments area is absolutely crucial. So my response is, okay, we're going to come back to messages and tell you how to submit the questions. So this is you in what I would call the qualification response area. So this is where you get the message. The questions have been deleted. Please upload everything in what they call the additional attachments area at the bottom of the page. And if you scroll down, you'll see something that looks like this. We're going to cover this later. And it says add and view attachments. So you don't need to fill in anything on the screen. You just need to work out which documents you need to include and then upload as attachments. These are important. We're going to come back to that later, but the save changes. So as you're going through, you need to make sure you save changes as you go. And save and exit, when you click on that, that's going to take you out of this qualification response. So if you click on buyer attachments, this is what you're going to see. And there will be, I don't show it in this slide here, but there's a way to mass download just all of the documents as a single zip file. And I suppose the biggest advice out of all this training is to literally download all of these documents and read them absolutely from start to finish, because in the terms and conditions, it's going to give you some advice on how the service is going to work. The declaration is something that has to be signed. The ITT, invitation to tender, is going to give you a nice overview of how the whole procurement works. You're going to have to return this, so you return, sorry, the declaration. You're going to have to return the lots that Laurie described, so agree which ones you want to go for. There's a document about freedom of information if you want to say which bits of your proposal that you want to not make automatically available to any FOI inquiries. And this bit particularly, this is the crucial part here, the SPD, the single procurement document that needs to be filled in order to get, that's what's going to get you through the first stage of this procurement. So you click on each file, or there's a button on the right hand side to mass download. Read them. Declarations, where they are, need to be signed and scanned. And then you're through largely to the what we would call the actual SPD. So this is when you open that Word document with the SPD, it's going to come up with a number of different parts. If you're new to this, it's going to look a bit horrendous, but I think I would probably say persevere, because it's actually the main bulk is this part 4, to be honest. Part 1 is the buyer putting in their information. Part 2 is probably more just about you know, your size of organisation, your address, blah, 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 all those sort of contact details. However, there is a bit in part 2 which asks if you're in any way involving any other what they call entities. So this is very European speak in the way that you're presenting for this. And I think some of you might have some questions about that. And I think Keely and the rest of everybody in the team might say, you know, when does somebody I don't know, like a training provider, when does somebody become a subcontractor versus part of your core organisation and so on? So part 2 is really important to look at, and we'll say a wee bit about that later in terms of what you might need to produce for that. Part 3 is the bit that looks the worst, so it goes on for pages and pages, but it's quite very much a yes/no tick the box in terms of what are it starts with things like, are you involved in terrorism, fraud, conspiracy, which are all obviously no. And then there's a section at the end, which is exclusions where possibly something might have happened that maybe an employment tribunal, so you can say, well, yes, this has happened, but it's what we call discretionary. So the councils involved could say, well, we can see what's happened, but you've given a good account of how you're going to get over that, so you're not excluded. And then you go on to part 4, which is the selection. Sorry, just skipped ahead a wee bit too fast. So the way that the procurement is set up at the moment for this tender, you've got a section which asks for insurance, and it also asks in terms of financials, not what your turnover is, but that there'll be a credit safe check done. So if you're not sure about that, I would definitely get in touch with the credit safe agency and just check out how your financials look on that and make sure that you're not in a position that might exclude you just at this first stage. 4C is the bit where probably I think everybody will need the most work. So you'll be asked for 2 example projects. We're going to talk about that shortly in the slides. You'll be asked for the staff qualifications. Qualifications I would include quite broadly, and I would say, because quite often people in this situation don't have formal qualifications, but you could have years experience, the training you've had, the number of programs you've delivered. So please kind of take a look at that and interpret it as broadly as possible and try and sort of match it up to some of the areas that Laurie was describing in terms of what the expectations of the council are, but relate it to your sort of team leaders, your team, your management, and so on. There's a question about manpower numbers. So that's literally over the last 3 years, probably, I think, and to what extent you're subcontracting. So again, that might be a discussion as to what's a subcontract and what's kind of associate within the business. So just coming back to this example projects, this will be important because it's a pass-fail question. And if you don't put in a decent account of, I think it's 2 example projects that need to be provided in the annex, then you do seriously run the risk that you might not be taken forward. So I'm sorry, this is quite small on the text, but this, in my experience, is a bit that needs a lot of work. And please sort of try and avoid kind of generic, you know, we were fantastic, it was high value, quality work. If you can keep it to real, what I would call evidence, you know, what were the challenges? What did we achieve? What were the, if you like, the numbers that went through, the methods, So I think the questions that you're given here tell you already what the various councils are looking for in this. So, you know, don't just put in one-liners or a small amount. I can't remember, to be honest, if there's any limit on this, so Keely will maybe come back and advise on that. But this is, to me, this is the area where you need to really spend a lot of time. So we'll have your SPD to upload. You've got your lots. I think there's a couple of declarations. And all you need to do, rather than fill in forms online, is to attach the files to what they call the general attachment space. Again, if you're using this system regularly, it's nice and easy, but if you're not, it might look a bit strange. So you'll get this bit at the bottom of the qualifications form when you log in. You can click on Add or View Attachments, Upload New File. There's a bit of blurb here about what's allowed and what's not. And then you click a file to upload. And basically that will take you into your laptop, iPad, phone, whatever. And at that point, you need to browse through and find the right document to upload. And that's where we definitely say, you know, as a tip, please make sure that you've got a proper folder in your, I don't know, My Documents or My Aberdeen Documents, whatever. But it says upload, so it's absolutely clear these are your final versions that we want to actually attach. We've had really lots of experiences of clients who've struggled and they couldn't find the last version, or they've uploaded something with lots of gaps in it, or questions or comments and so on. So be organised in the way that you get your responses together. You find the file, you click on it, you click on open, and then that will upload it, and it would show a little bit like this bit at the bottom here. So just check as well that it looks like a file. I've had one that went before for a customer and it was 0 kilobytes, which meant it was a bit corrupted. So, but it was too late, it was submitted as that. And then you click on confirm once you're happy that that's ready to go. As you're working through the document, so it's on PCS tender, I think probably it's okay because I think you'll be working offline, so to speak, to prepare your documents, and you'll only be online when you're ready to upload them. So, but as you are filling in, there's certain other bits of the form. Please keep clicking on Save Changes, just in case the system times out, and Save and Exit will take you out of the qualification section altogether. And obviously, you're not going to go in and complete this all in one day or a few hours. So it's absolutely fine that you keep coming in and out of the system just to keep updating what you need to. So really important again is asking questions. I'm not sure. I think I've had a look at the tender specifications, and it looks on the surface like you can ask questions forever till 2027. So maybe Keely might answer, or the team might answer that. But you need to make sure you cannot email or phone directly to the council teams that you're involved in. You need to put everything through this PCS tender portal. The buyer will be able to see who you are when you ask, and they might occasionally reply to you individually. But certainly in PCS tender, most of what you ask would be circulated to everybody else. So you need to make sure, don't include your details, but also don't be frightened to ask questions, because it's not a negative thing. A lot of people say this, oh, I don't want to ask, it makes me look stupid. I think actually, to be honest, it makes you look like you're really interested and you're thinking about it. So yeah, get clarity, ask as many questions as you can and as soon as possible as of now. So when you're on PCS tender, we talked a little bit about this PQQ details where the response is. There's another section here called messages, and that tab opens up create a message, receive a message, sent, draft, and so on. So as you're working through this, and in fact, potentially, to be honest, over the next 5 years, questions might come through to your email address, and it will be the email of the person that's registered, and it will come from autoalert@bravosolution.co.uk, I think it is. So it might not immediately look important, but obviously before you put your submission in, you need to keep a track of that, or log in and check this receive messages. And if you have any messages that you want to send, click on this create, and it's very straightforward. We'll show that in the quick demo afterwards. So submitting your stage 1 application, this is what's happening through PCS tender. When you're ready and you think you've uploaded all the documents, before you submit, I would recommend that you use this printable view option again, and it's 3 little dots up at the top of the page. You can do that, and it presents as a PDF, so it makes you kind of read through anything you've done. Otherwise, you submit response, and that goes through. You can actually, and maybe this is another question for the council guys, you could submit and that will be evaluated, but if you decided to change something, you can still go forward and kind of adjust and resubmit at any time. However, I don't know how that works with if the councils decide, to evaluate what you've put in so far. And at stage 1, you're largely self-certifying what you've got in terms of insurances and other documents that are needed. So you might not need to upload these at the time of submission, but you will get a reply quite quickly once you have put your submission in to ask for the actual documents itself. And normally what it happens is you get that as a message. So whoever the key contact is, and be careful as well. Here's another tip probably. So if you're registering, putting your submission in and it goes to jane@intend.co.uk, say, if Jane's on holiday, you might get follow-up requests and Jane's not going to see them. So it's much better to use attenders@, info@, any sort of alias, if you like, that goes to several people. So the request for documents in certain types of DPS exercises, you only get 48 hours to reply, so you need to be quite ready and up. Again, that's maybe a question for the councils, what their expectations are for that. And there is certainly an expectation, if you are on the DPS, you will need to go back in and refresh and update the details that you've put in, because this is literally just stage 1 of getting in. So stage 2, if you do win the DPS, I think this has been covered a little bit already, there'll be mini competitions coming up. In general, what will happen is that price is 40% and quality is 60%. So you don't need to repeat any of the stage 1 type questions, but you will need to talk about how you're going to meet the requirements, how you're going to manage things, and very important again for Scottish procurement, fair work, community benefits. Again, I would point you to the supplier development programme for courses on that. That's going to give you an idea if you're not familiar. And all stage 2 will be on Public Contract Scotland, so you won't need to go through PCS tender again. If you're invited to quote, so say you get onto the DPS, you're going to get something through a particular email. And that's again where you need to make sure that this email is valid, that you're going to get that quote coming through. You have to accept the invitation to quote. And then once you do that, it'll open up all the various documents and things that you need to upload. You'll upload it through what they call the PCS Postbox, and then you dispatch. And we'll show that very quickly. Hopefully we've got a little bit of time for the online demo for that. So the PCS Postbox, once you register your interest and click and say, yes, I want to go ahead and quote, you'll get the documents details here, you'll get Q&A, and this is the go to Postbox that you would use to submit. It then comes up in a list of what they call notice responses, and you have to create it first, and then that will open it up to something that looks like this. So above that would be all your contact details, and then you get your document upload space. So you put in a very description, you can choose what you like, choose a file, and then it will take you back to your My Documents or your My Tenders file, and then you would add, and it just lists, here's one here, but it would just add in all the different documents. You can save and exit if you're doing it over a number of days, and then dispatch when you're ready. So there's technical support. I'll just leave that on the slides there. I'm just going to stop sharing quickly. Sorry, that's a lot for everyone. By the way, if you're a novice, you might be thinking, oh my goodness. But there's time, there's plenty of time, obviously, to go through that and just get this sorted out, the share. Don't know if anything's come through the chat so far. Or
No, not yet, but that's a good reminder,
no.
guys. Use your chat to ask any questions. Just pop them in as they pop into your head and fire them over to us. And remember to change your option to all panelists, please.
Okay, so
We're not sharing yet, Jill, sorry.
Let's see if that shares.
There we go. We're on PCST. Thank you.
Great. So I'm maybe actually going to spend a wee bit more time on the PCS part, because that's where, like in stage 2, you're going to come across this. If you're looking for the notice, you would just search the buyer. And Aberdeen is already enough just to bring up Aberdeen City Council, who are the lead, but obviously on behalf of the 3 authorities. And this brings you into the buyer details. So the current contracts, DPS is right at the top here, and you can see the deadlines 2027. And this is where you get this link then to the PCS tender. You can also at this point read through the full notice text, which will give you all the lots information. But to be honest, I think most of in the notice, everything refers you back to the tender documents. So you're as well just to go straight through to the what we'd call the PCS tender website. Let's see if that is that still showing, Fran?
Yes, we're on PCST.
So I'm just going to quickly, I'm going to log in as somebody else just now, so it shows you quickly how to get into this. So all the registration you can do on the main page of PCS Tender, but once you've registered, avoid the ITTs and the notice, just go to this one here, PQQs. And you end up in this PQQs open to all suppliers. And at that point, this is where we can put in our project code from the notice. So project code contains, make sure I've got the correct code, 23. 027. And that immediately takes you to the current version then that you need to be logging into. You can see the deadline there. Click on that. And the first thing you need to do, and this is where PCST is a bit clunky, you don't get straight into the form, you've got to express an interest. You can do a printable view before you do that, which is that PDF I mentioned with all the different questionnaires and so on, so you can save that anyway. Express an interest. Every so often when you click something, it has this like pop-up OK kind of thing. But this is bringing us in now then to the main form. So we're in PQQ details, and this buyer attachments is the one that's the most important. And it's in a folder, so you have to open it up. And what I would generally do here is just click on this mass download in the corner, rather than, you can open them up separately and save them. But at this point, these are the main documents that are going to make the big difference in terms of what you submit. So terms and conditions, very important, particularly for if you get to the next stage in terms of bidding for work. A declaration is something that has to be signed. ITT is background information, but very important. Lot confirmation has to be uploaded. Non-disclosure, if you decide bits of freedom of information that you don't want excluded, and particularly this one here. So this is the critical one, the SPD Scotland Employability Doc. And that's where you're going to fill in your manpower, your insurance, your background details, and so on. So that already is one that I would be looking at straight away. So that's buyer attachments. My response, when you click on it, is going to say that all the questions have been deleted. So that's okay, but hidden down below is this additional attachments area, and this is where you need to be able, so I'm going to say intend to respond, and that's going to open up this part for me to be able to include my information. So the additional attachments area, at this point, just trying to see why I can't see. It's not showing me how to actually attach them. I'll just try and go in again. Yeah, sorry. So you click on qualification. It will tell you that everything's been deleted, but if you scroll down the screen, then you can add and view your attachments. And this is where you need to put in your SPD, your lots, the FOI, and I think, sorry, there's another document that needs to go in. So at the moment, there's nothing in, but you need to upload a new file. There's a bit of text here, and this is all in the slides that I gave you as to the different extensions that are not allowed. But most, what I would say, standard files are allowed. So you click on select file. So this has brought me into my SDP documents. I'm going to choose something small just to show you. Click on the file, open, and confirm. And then that now puts this into these attached documents, but you need to either upload another one, which you probably will do, or it's probably not a bad idea to save all. And then that's all ready. As you move down system, you can see that that's saved the file. And as you're going through this, just be aware, I think I've showed that in the slides, it's a good idea just to keep clicking Save Changes, because the system will almost close itself down after about 20 minutes. So if you've got 4 files to upload and you're worried about the time, just keep doing the Save Changes. Otherwise, there's only one file here, but say you've got your 4 that you need, you save and exit. Say OK. And it means that you've then got your qualification response, but you can also go down and check that you've got everything uploaded as necessary. And you're then ready to submit the response, or click on this 3 documents again, 3 dots rather, and do your printable view, because that's going to show you everything that's been filled in your response. So, and just before that, so yeah, just go back to the messages. Probably, I think, after today, because there's quite a lot to think about on these tenders, you might have quite a few questions. This is where, once you're registered for the DPS here on Public Contract Scotland tenders, if you use the messages, you can click on Received and see messages that have come through. So there's nothing on this one yet. However, you will also receive indications of messages in your mailbox. So whoever's the named contact, if you like, for this tender, they're going to get these things coming through from Auto Alert at Bravo Solutions. So that would already give you a click through to anything received. You can create a message and you just describe what, what's the classification. It might be commercial, subject, da 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 da. Message, you can put a message in, obviously, and then send the message, and that will go through. And once you do that, when you go to send messages, there's nothing here to show, but it will tell you what you've sent. Has the buyer read it, and have they replied to it? So the messaging is really quite crucial on this tab to know about. Okay, so PQQ details, I think we've covered that then in terms of my response. Buyer attachments is the very important part. And then when you're finally got to your response area, if you submit the response and click OK, this is already going to come up and say potentially that there's areas that I've not covered, but you can submit before the deadline and resubmit, so that's really important. So if anything, if you're really time delayed, submit what you can and then go back and resubmit any time up until the deadline. So I think I'm just going to stop sharing because time's a wee bit pressing. So